So that moves me straight into where we are right now. We are in crisis worldwide. The coronavirus pandemic has upended our world, Joe, and has created a perfect VUCA environment, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I mean, what advice do you have for leaders at this present moment? We're seeing businesses going up in flames. We're seeing businesses going for voluntary management and that kind of stuff. What advice do you have for leaders in this season where there's so much uncertainty because of the coronavirus?
Trevor, I don't know if I'll have enough time to cover what I want.
We have time, Joe. We have time.
Okay, I would like to offer 7 pieces of advice, if I can. I think the starting point for me would be to say to leaders, as you go into crisis, as you are in the middle of crisis, remember the Mandela paradox. I call it the Mandela paradox. And this is a paradox of somebody who spent his 27 years in prison, but all the time he retained a positive attitude. He was there, he didn't know how long he would be there. He had some of the harshest conditions at Robben Island, crushing stones with his colleagues there. But every time we read or heard about Nelson Mandela, he was positive. So I say to leaders, you got to embrace a positive approach, but you need to balance it with realism because the eyeballs of the organization are on you. If the organization sees that you have fortitude and resilience, the organization will stand together with you and will tackle the problems that are before you with their whole heart. If they see you as a leader crumbling, you demoralize the organization. That's lesson number 1 for me. So how you show up is a very important thing for leaders in crisis. So please look at Nelson Mandela, understand the Mandela paradox, balance properly between positive outlook and the realism of the situation that we face. It's a very grim situation, but leaders cannot afford to crumble in times of crisis.
Joe, that's an important lesson. And my question to you is, how do I, as a leader, manage to remain optimistic and show this fortitude that rallies everybody around? How do I do that when I myself I'm in the same environment that the people that are around me are experiencing? What is it that I need to do?
Well, Trevor, it's too late if you want to find that solution now. Position of leadership requires that you have that inner fortress before the crisis. You can't invent it during the crisis.
Right.
You have to be grounded well ahead of the crisis. You know, the crisis does some amazing things. It blows away the style and really reveals who you are. Okay, if you don't have the values, if you don't have the grounding, if you don't have the conviction and the principles and self-belief, you will not be able to acquire them overnight during a crisis.
True.
So as part of the journey of leadership, you better have that inner fortress. You better have that sense of values. You better know who you are, that self-belief, because they will put you in good stead during time of crisis.
Excellent. I interrupted you. You were looking at your first advice there. What would be the second thing for people to?
The second thing, Trevor, is that as a leader, and we can see it all around us today. All you need to do is to switch on your television. You see the difference between leaders. As leaders during crisis, you gotta be able to balance hard power with smart power. Hard power, in my view, is where you resorting to the hierarchical structure, your status, your position, issuing instructions, command and control, the normal kind of thing that we see in high power distance societies like in Africa. At a time of crisis like this, you gotta use smart power. And what do I mean by smart power? I mean here, first of all, that you got to understand that you need a great deal of social intelligence to lead effectively, particularly during a traumatic crisis like the one we are currently under.
Mm.
In a traumatic crisis like this one, you need to be able to understand that the people that you lead are in pain.
True.
They are going through trauma. They have paid a very high price. Some have cancelled events, weddings, churches, and all those things that are very dear to them. Some have got relatives that are dying overseas. Some have not seen their children. They are in a place of pain. And the leader needs to understand that and offer support and offer empathy and offer compassion and be there for the people that they lead. That's the number one aspect of kind of being smart as a leader. The second aspect, Trevor, and we've seen it, I mean, we've seen it abundantly in the last few weeks, is that you got to rely on data and science. And you can't just give voice to the people who are experts in your company. Let the experts speak. Let them put their contribution on the table. Listen to them. Be guided by them. And we have seen very clearly that those leaders who are following experts tend to make rational, well-reasoned decisions that are probably best for their company and for their organizations. That's what I mean by smart power. So it's not a time to be a boss. It's a time to empathize with your team. Leaders are the containers of the emotions of the people that they lead. And this is a time when that must be demonstrated. So that's my second piece of advice, Trevor, to leaders.
The third one?
My third one, Trevor, is that, we have seen this, I don't know, some people have called it a false dichotomy, where even the other day, our own president was talking about, do you save lives or livelihoods? I'm mentioning this because in a crisis, leaders face dilemmas. There are no easy answers. And leaders may find that, how do they respond? They have to dig very deep into themselves. That is why the point I made at the beginning of being grounded, of having a value system, of knowing who you are matters so much. Because you're going to face what I call wicked problems that require you to really fall back on what kind of person you are. And this dilemma that leaders across the world are facing is a very real one. Do you save lives or livelihoods? Our president made a very clear distinction the other day. He says, well, when people die, you can't resuscitate them. When the economy dies, you can sit around the table and resuscitate it. But there's some other leaders across the world who are saying, no. This is not right. You gotta bring back people to work, and you gotta save livelihoods. So it's a dilemma. So leaders are gonna face dilemmas, and when they face those dilemmas, they must dig deep into who they are and to their value system.
It's a binary way of looking at things, and I want to push you there. Can you not do both at the same time? Save the economy and save lives. Can you not strike that balance, Joe?
Absolutely. In fact, Trevor, you've taken the words out of my mouth. Many times we seem to get problems that we think are binary, requiring one solution or the other, black and white. It's never like that. There are shades of gray. You can do this and that. And that mindset is very important to have, because otherwise you paint yourself into a corner by creating a false paradox, if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the next piece of advice, Joe, leadership in crisis?
Trevor, it's to do with leaders always face generic solutions. Sometimes you get theories about management. Sometimes you get, like what we're facing today in this crisis. There are generic solutions that are coming from the World Health Organization. Some of them are very sound. Very, very sound. In fact, most of them are very sound. You follow certain protocols, you follow social distancing, you wash your hands, you sanitize, all that's very good, excellent. and countries and leaders should follow that in their organizations or in their countries. But having done that, there are also local circumstances, specific circumstances that face individual companies and individual countries that must be taken into account when leaders make decisions. What I'm talking about here, Trevor, is don't always follow the generic solutions. Adapt some of the measures to your local situation. And I think this has applicability, not just in this crisis, but in other crises and in other situations all the time. And it's a lesson that leaders ought to bear in mind all the time. The generic is fine.
Yeah.
But the specific must be taken into account.
Again, it's not binary. That's what we say.
It's not binary. It's a combination.
It's a combination.
Very much a combination.
Okay. The next lesson, Joe, I'm really enjoying this.
Well, Trevor, there's a big lesson in this crisis today, and it's about the drive for profitability and efficiency against building resilience. Again, it looks like a binary choice. We've seen how unprepared a lot of countries have been, including ours, in this crisis, and how unprepared many organizations are in times of crisis. Well, we as business leaders tend very much sometimes to focus on profitability and efficiencies. We look at investments in building resilience as wastage, as being wasteful. Let me just be much more specific there, Trevor.
Sure.
When companies, for example, look at, do they promote the quarterly profit target? Do they go for that? Or do they invest in redundancies, having buffer stocks, having redundant IT systems, having supply chains that are much more resilient? Many leaders will opt for short-term profits. And when a time like this comes, they are found short. They are found wanting. It's a brutal audit, in fact, on the organization. So I'm saying to leaders, it's not binary. It's not short-term profit orientation versus long-term resilience. It's both. And as you look at the other, you must also give consideration to the other. They both go together. That's how you build sustainable organizations. So it's a very important lesson for leaders all over the world.
Wonderful. The next one?
The next one is very difficult, Trevor. This crisis offers, and I've been reflecting very much on this. What happens post-COVID? How are business models going to be sustained post-COVID? And here you're looking at, as the crisis is hitting businesses in Zimbabwe and everywhere else, there are two kinds of responses. The first one is the survival one. Businesses are worried about the here and now. What do you do to survive? You're obviously concerned about your employees. Do I keep them? Do I let some go home? Do I put them on half pay? Do I sustain them on current pay? How do I manage my cash flows? How am I managing my supply chain? How am I going to keep some of my key customers? What happens to my creditors? What are my relationships with my bankers and so forth? This is immediate. This is about survival. Okay. The danger, Trevor, is that the crisis passes and all you have done as a leader is to focus on those survival issues. Okay. There's another side that also requires attention, a lot of great attention, and that is your business model sustainable post-COVID? In fact, to be able to answer that question, you've got to ask yourself another question. What has changed permanently?
That's a tough
Which won't go back to what it was yesterday?
Yeah.
And leaders ought to be asking that question. What has changed permanently? Because if some things have changed permanently, there are very serious implications. Implications like, are my assumptions for my business still right? Are there certain assumptions I must let go and some assumptions that I must now get hold of? It requires the teams to sit around the table and examine and interrogate that. Because in the process of interrogating that, then we will have to recalibrate to say, okay, we've survived by taking the actions in the short term that we have taken. But going forward, if our business model is no longer sustainable, what do we do? I listen to business leaders and they use this word very loosely. We're going to pivot. Okay, what does it mean to pivot?
Right.
What are the implications of that pivoting? Okay, are you going to keep the same customers, the same market that you were chasing yesterday? I look at many businesses that are going to be affected, not in the short term, but in the long term, medium to long term. Entertainment business, the airline industry,
Media,
the tourism sector. There are things that have changed today that may never go back to what we were in the past. And this is time for leaders to put their innovation caps on, to say, fine, we've managed the short term, but long term, what is our business model like? And that's the critical, very important question that cannot be deferred, that leaders must tend to as a matter of urgency.
Wow. And any other lesson, Joe, before we leave?
My final lesson, Trevor, is a broader one. And it is to do with, there's a trade-off, Trevor, and we're seeing it right now between individual rights and the collective. Many countries are staring down the barrel of that particular dilemma. And as you fight the COVID-19 pandemic, in the process, individual rights and liberties might be trampled upon. Where do you draw the line? As you gather information on people, as you trace and follow up people and get their data, as leaders, we must be mindful of the fact that we are gathering data which is very privileged, which is very private. And what we do with that data must be a matter that must exercise the minds of leaders. Because in the process of doing this thing, which is good for the collective, for everybody, you could very easily find yourself crossing the line and trampling upon the individual privacy and rights. Again, it's not binary. Again, it's a question of looking at the two and seeing how they coexist, the balance between the two.